So I watched a video this weekend on endgames, and I'll put a link to that video up right above my head here and in the show description, and I would recommend everybody watch that video if you have the time. It was actually from Matt at Chess Goals. It was a live stream on the endgames, and now it's available as a YouTube video. And I got a lot from that live stream, and I tried to apply some of the stuff I learned in it this last week, since I watched it, and I've had really good results. I'm on a bit of a winning streak here. And so what I wanted to do was just make a video showing 3 of the end games that I have played since watching that video, and how it ties into one of the key overarching themes of that live stream. There was a number of things, but one of the key ideas was activity and playing actively in the end games. And that's something I don't think I've always been the best at doing. But when you think about it, often you get to the end game, both sides are low on time. Both sides are, kind of uncomfortable at the club level, at my level at least. We don't have all the theoretical end games memorized. And so kind of what helps you in regular chess is still going to help you in the end game, and part of that is activity. And so let's look at a few positions I got here, and I promise you they'll be fun. That's one thing cool thing about that video was all the positions were interesting and fun, even more so than these. But these are practical ones that came up in my game since watching that video. So let's get rolling here. So this is an endgame position I got, and it was white to move, and this would actually be an equal endgame if you threw it into the engine. But if we stick with our idea of activity, it's white to move here. And normally, if you have no idea what else to do, I believe we were both, this was a 10-0 game, so it's not like we came here with minutes to think on each move or anything. All else fails, what a good thing to do is like push your passed pawn, right? That is an active way of playing. And of course, the other idea would be when you got a queen and the other side doesn't have a queen, to try to get a barrage of checks in here and maybe try to, get perpetual checks or something like that, get their king on a run. A key element when you have queen end games, one side has a queen, another has like equivalent pieces, is the safety of the king for the side that doesn't have the queen. And so I was expecting, in this position here, like I said, either a6 or some kind of queen check, either here, but something to get some activity and get my queen, my king on the run. But in the game, my opponent actually played rook to b7, and that actually let me get the initiative, let me play actively. So maybe just pause the video and see and just think like, how would you respond to this? You were expecting a6 or a check to get us on the run, or to threaten, to push this passed pawn and promote it. But he kind of did neither. He's attacking this rook, but that's less active than pushing that pawn. So in the game, what I decided to do, one of the things I'm really trying to do lately is play actively, more actively than I used to. One of my faults was that I would play too passively and not actively enough. And so I got into this okay position by playing actively. And so I decided, well, double the rooks up, get these rooks connected, start making some threats from behind. And if you look at it, that king isn't real comfortable with our wall of pawns here and these rooks coming behind. And this actually ended up working really well. He kind of panicked and did this check, and I was able to maneuver my way into a position here where there was no checks available. And so I don't know, to be honest, what white's best move would be. Now I have the activity, and this is going to be pretty easy for me at this point. So in the game, he played e4, and that actually makes it easier for me, right? He opened up his king. This move is like an active move, but unfortunately he's not in a safe enough position to play actively in this way and open up his king. So if you want to pause the video here, this is actually mate in 5, and I did mate him, I think, in 5 moves. in the game. But it might be worth looking at. So in the game, I played rook to a3. And now we have a situation where we can take squares away from his king. And then we have mate here. Now if we went back, it wouldn't matter if he threw in. It'd still be mate in 5 this way. We still get the same kind of thing going on here. Alright, let's see. Yeah, we would just go like this. So I think that was 5 moves. But anyway, it doesn't matter. The point is in this key position, he did not play actively enough in this position right here. He didn't play actively enough, so we played actively, and it got me the full point. This should have been a draw. So that was game number 1. Now game number 2 is actually more interesting, and this will tie to the last 2 examples will tie together with kind of key, kind of like theoretical endgame ideas. That knowing those let me win those games more easily. And let's get to those here. So this was the position I got to in another endgame, and in this position, it's actually me to move. So you can see I have 1 extra pawn, and it's a pass pawn, and that kind of ties down his rooks. So this should be winning if I can play actively enough, pose questions to him. And I believe this was I think it was a game in 10. I don't remember, but neither one of us had an abundance of time. Let's just put it that way. At the end, I don't think I had a ton of time, but all the games are kind of blurring together. But what I ended up doing is I ended up playing e4 here, playing actively, right? And what's interesting is he responded with rook to c1. And so earlier I had played actively by coming up with this alignment, and so with my clock ticking, I just ripped this move off right away, because now when he moved his rook away from our a7 pawn, we only have to have 1 rook on it to protect it now. And now this is where my opponent actually tried to set up a trap, and it was actually pretty cool. One thing I noted when he moved earlier in the position, when he moved his king here, even when this rook was not down on c1 yet, when he moved his rook to that square, that made it so I cannot take that pawn on h6. It's not a free pawn because he has checkmate, with the king covering those squares and the rook covering this entire file. So I had mentally noted that before, so I was aware of this. And so when he played rook to c1, of course, this move is on my radar screen. But interestingly, what he ended up doing is he abandoned this a pawn, and I think it was kind of a cunning little trap he tried to set. He played rook to g8, and so now the idea is if we promote, game over, right? He's got checkmate. So I have to do something about that. I have to figure out how I'm going to solve that. Like, playing here doesn't help, right? He just comes in behind. I'm blocked in. And so I would encourage you to pause the video here and see if you can come up with an answer. See if you can find how white can still win this position, how we can avoid checkmate. And then what's interesting is I'll go through an example of how I think it came to me really quickly, and I think it's because of this position that I knew. All right, so first, just kind of take a mental snapshot of this. And what gave me the idea is one of the most important theoretical endgames in chess, called the Lucena position. And the Lucena position, I won't go into all the details of it, but it's this idea of building a bridge and shielding your king from checks by using your rook to shield checks from their rook with your rook. And how that works is you get in an endgame position like this, and what you do is you move your rook to the 4th rank, and now black's only hope here is to really try to give a barrage of checks from behind. And the idea is we march towards this rook in a certain way where we triangulate, and then we have this idea of using the rook as a shield. So the idea is, as well, it's shielded now, he can't take that, he's too far away, and we promote. But the key idea is this move right here, this rook shield. And so this was kind of, like somehow I thought of this during the game, and I'm like, oh, this, I can create like a Lucina-like position here. It's quite interesting. So if we go back to the game, the winning move is actually rook to f5. And the idea being he has to move his king away. So in the game he moved rook to e7, and now we got our Lucina kind of idea. And the idea is now if he plays rook to h1, we have this shield, right? And the cool thing is this is not actually checkmate because of this, and then we win. So in the game he didn't actually play rook to h1 check. He played this move, and then so I was just able to take this like this, and then he resigned. So that was the second game. And now I just wanted to do one more game because it involves an idea from a theoretical position, kind of like this Lucina position. But the idea is to stay playing actively unless you recognize that you for sure have a winning position, and then go ahead and trade pieces off, right? But don't do that until you know you have a winning position. And so let's look at this last game. It was actually really interesting. So I played actively throughout this game, and like I said, I've been on a roll. I've been actually trying to apply the stuff I learned in this video, and it's been working. So I got in this position, and of course this is better for black, right? He has an extra pawn and we have an extra knight, but we still have to win this position. And so I got to this position here, and so if you think about it, let me set this up. He actually played h5, so now it is actually us to move as black. If you think about it, the most active move would be to take with the rook if he didn't take back with the rook, right? So ideally we'd want to do that. We'd get control of this file, we'd activate our rook. He can't come attack this pawn from the side because our king. He can't come attack it from the front because of our knight. So that would be the active way of playing it. So the question is, does it work? And so this is where knowing some of the real kind of basic endgame ideas come into play. And so in my mind, I thought, okay, I know of positions like this. So in this position, it would be black to move. White has just come in here to d6. And the thing is we can win this easily. We just play, like, if we want to be real precise, we can play king to f6, shield his king out. And the interesting thing to note here is he cannot come and try to win our knight, or we just advance the pawn and he can't catch it. So getting this formation where we have the knight protecting the pawn from behind, note that it could be here, it could be here, it doesn't matter. It just has to be too far away for that king to catch the pawn after it retakes it. And so if we look at the position in the game, we want to play rook takes a4 because it's the most active move. So the question is, can we? So maybe pause and calculate and see if you can figure out how to create a position like we just saw with the knight from behind the pawn. And in fact, we can do that. we're safe to go ahead and take that. The idea being, if he takes the rook, we get in this position here, and this is actually, you know, pretty good in the sense that even if he marches straight over in this line, we can just push this pawn, and we get in this situation where we have the knight protecting that pawn from behind. So now we just grab these pawns, march our king over to help this promote this pawn forward, and the task is pretty simple. So then the other question to be answered is, well, we know he can't do rook takes rook. Then if he can't do rook takes rook, well, then we won that pawn, right? So in the game, he does pawn takes pawn. So now we have the same question. We don't want to simplify. We want to play active unless we know we're going into a position that we know is won, that we can calculate for sure, and we know that it's winning. So the question is this winning? And you can pause the video and calculate it out if you want. But once again, we play actively to give the check. And now in the game, I played knight to b4. And the interesting thing to note is that this pawn stops the king from coming to d5. And so in that position, we can come down here, and now the pawn blocks d5 and the knight blocks c5. So we're going to be able to maneuver that behind it, or even more precisely, we just push that pawn. So all he can basically do is sidestep, and I don't even have to push it yet. I grab that pawn first. Now we push it forward. And so this is just a very easy win here. We just gobble the pawn, then we just come over, get our king in good position. I was in a time, pressure, I think, so I didn't, I just made sure I made the winning moves, not the most precise move. So anyway, I found it really interesting. One thing I do, my tendencies is to not play actively enough, to play too passive. So I've actually been studying these chess schools openings, which are the London, the Cairo, and the Triangle Slav. But they tend to play them more actively. And I've been having good results so far. So hopefully in the future I'll make some more videos. I've been kind of tied up with a lot of stuff outside of chess. But anyway, I'll put a link to that chess schools video. I would suggest watching it. It's actually really interesting stuff, and directly helped me go on kind of a winning streak here. So I'm just going to keep trying to play more actively, both in the middle game and the opening and the end game, and see if I can keep making progress. So anyway, take care, guys.